Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stassi. Thank you so much for being here today. Happy Halloween, everybody, for everyone that celebrates it. I will be celebrating it as Miss Daphne from Scooby-Doo, and my husband will be Freddie. But also, happy season opener for Real Life with Stassi. I am so excited to have Eruudia here today to talk about modern-day witchcraft. Is that the right way I would frame that?
Yes. Yeah, that would be a
Yes!
great way to frame it.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm just like, oh my God, the witchcraft community is so big. I just don't want to offend anybody.
Right. No,
Yes.
totally fair.
Oh my God.
Uh, and to that end, there's like a lot of different practices as well. So it's like there's this big umbrella term, but there's like a lot of different groups within it too. So
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to dive in and learn a little bit more. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
yeah, so I am a cozy variety streamer over on Twitch. I primarily play The Sims, as well as other games like Stardew Valley or cozy indie games. We play like Botany Manor and other puzzle games as well over there. Um, and I'm also a modern day witch. I read tarot on my streams sometimes. Um, I've been interested in or like into witchcraft and the occult since I was about 13.
Hmm.
And sort of practicing on and off since that time. So yeah.
That is amazing. You must be so excited for the Life and Death Pact. We now have tarot card
Yes.
readings.
Yes. I'm so excited to see how that's gonna work.
I can't wait either. I'm really curious to see. I mean, as obviously this podcast is being filmed well, the well before the pack has come out. However, the pack is out today, so I hope everyone who's listening to this can go enjoy the Life and Death expansion pack. Um, so like you said, you got into this at 13 years old. Like, what inspired you to take this path of you wanting to learn witchcraft?
I think part of it was honestly, this is really funny, but like the supernatural phrase like Twilight and werewolves and vampires and stuff.
Mhm.
All of that was really big around the time I was 13. So I got really into that, but I like hyper fixated on it. And so I started looking into the history of where we got these myths and legends about occult beings like vampires and werewolves, which led me into the history of witchcraft and like folk magic and things like that. And just kind of went down the rabbit hole from there. That's part of it. The other part is actually my mother reads tarot, and while she wouldn't call her a witch, a lot of the like spiritual home rituals she has, many modern witchcraft practitioners would consider folk magic. Um, and those are things that have been sort of handed down through my family on the maternal side for generations. I recently found out like a great aunt used to read tea leaves and things like that. And she was never considered a witch, but we would consider that to be witchy today.
Okay. So you said folk magic. Do you
Mhm.
mind clarifying by what that means?
Yeah, so folk magic is like little rituals and traditions that are unique to a family or household or culture, that the practitioners wouldn't necessarily consider it magic or witchcraft. It's more based in superstitions. Um, Things like the first thing that comes to mind is like salting the doorway.
Okay.
That's something that's used in a lot of different cultures and communities for as like a protection or a ward, to keep, bad spirits or bad like illness out of the house.
Hmm.
Um, that is considered a form of folk magic in a lot of circles.
Okay.
So,
And you said that's not part of witchcraft. What, out of curiosity, why wouldn't that be considered? I'm just trying to see both sides.
so it's not that it wouldn't be considered witchcraft, it's more that the people who engage in these traditions don't always identify as witches, if that makes sense. Like,
Okay.
that is something that I personally do as part of my warding and protection routines. But and I consider myself a witch, but not everyone who does that. Some people will just say this is just what we've always done. This is like, this is just our traditions. They're not
Hmm.
gonna think of it as magic or as witchcraft. It's just, like folk practices.
Okay. No, that totally makes sense. And you said this is obviously on the long line of generations on the maternal side.
Mhm.
How did you discover that your great aunt used to read tea leaves?
Um, Honestly, just like talking to my mom about family history.
Hmm.
But I also had a really fun tarot reading with one of my um witchy friends who is another reader. They were doing a reading for me. Um, and I had specifically asked for an ancestor reading. Uh, and they mentioned something about like whoever's coming through, they used to do like some form of magic or like divination. And
Hmm.
I asked my mom about it, and she's like, "Oh, well, your Aunt Peggy used to do read tea leaves for people in addition to owning her own business and like all this other stuff." So like, yeah,
Interesting. That's
yeah.
that's that's fascinating because I know reading tea leaves is a very important, I believe, in the Greek culture. I don't want to destroy that, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Yes, it is
Yes.
common in Greek culture.
It's common in Greek culture and Chinese culture.
I believe so. I don't know as much about the Chinese practices
That
because
that
that's not relevant to my craft.
that's
But
fair. That
yeah.
that that no, no, that's totally okay. So what type of witchcraft are you currently partaking in?
So my primary focus is on more Celtic traditions because that's where the majority of my lineage is. And that's not saying that you have to have a specific lineage to access witchcraft, but there are certain practices that are closed. And
Hmm.
so that's something you need to be mindful to navigate. So that is something that I engage with more like from a standpoint of my family history.
Hmm.
um, I do also work with my ancestors a lot, do ancestor veneration. So that looks like things like I have a silver tray that I inherited from my grandmother. So for me, ancestor veneration is like polishing that as an act of um, veneration, or like leaving flowers in on top of the tray. And then when I'm reading tarot for myself, sometimes I will ask for guidance from specific family members who have passed on,
Hmm.
to see what advice they have and read the cards through that lens.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm kind of speechless. At this point, I'm gonna keep saying I'm speechless the entire time because like I told you coming into this, like my level of Wiccans is
Mhm.
Harry Potter and Scooby-Doo. Like that is as
Yeah.
much as I know about this community.
Mhm.
What other forms of witchcraft or could you partake in these days?
So I have a friend who would identify themselves as like a sea witch,
Okay.
because the majority of their craft is things that are tied to the sea. So they do a lot of the spells that they do is related to water and to like they'll use seashells and things like that as like a common spell is called a money bowl, where you literally just like put a bowl on an altar, fill it with coins or things that are tied to wealth or prosperity as a way to secure financial stability for the household.
Okay.
Um, so like a sea witch might, instead of putting coins in, put seashells because that was considered a form of currency in some cultures and has that same energetic tie to
Okay.
prosperity or wealth.
Okay. So if you were to cast a spell, what type of spell would you cast and what would you need to do it?
So I primarily work with like kitchen magic. So that's looking at what the magical properties are of the ingredients of in your food. Um, Something that I work with really commonly is cinnamon is tied to prosperity and success.
Okay.
Um, so a lot of spices have that similar properties there. So something that I do like around Thanksgiving, um, because of all of the components of the pecan pie that I make every year. What I'll do is I'll bake the pie with the intention of it building my family's prosperity and building its wealth, and then I'll carve sigils to that end in the bottom of the pie crust before I bake the pie. So it's just adding a little bit extra intention
Hmm.
into like an everyday activity in order to add a little bit of magic.
Okay. That I mean that's awesome. What type of sigils do you put on? Is it just symbols or is it
So
I wouldn't even know other
I
besides a symbol.
so there are like some people use runes, which are like they have established meaning and established structure.
Hmm.
I for sigils, what I'll do is I will like hold on, it might be if I can demonstrate. So I'll like write a sentence. I don't even know what I want to put here. Um, but I'll like write a sentence and then I'll cross out all of the vowels and all of the repeating letters. And then
Okay.
I'll arrange the remaining letters in a circle
Hmm.
and then connect them in a specific way. And whatever sign comes out from me connecting the letters in the circle becomes my sigil that is invoking the sentence that I just wrote. And then I'll trace that into the pie crust or into whatever resource I'm using for the spell in order to add that intention into what I'm making.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I would have never considered sticking like putting that on a bottom of pie crust. I mean, all I do with pie crust is that I stab the fucking shit
Yeah.
out of it. So like
Mhm.
that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
That is so fast. What other recipes would you make?
Um, so one of my favorites is my success cookies, which they're just like oatmeal butterscotch cookies, but they have so sugar, cinnamon, and oats are all tied to wealth.
Okay.
And I have made them for friends like ahead of interviews and things like that in order to like give them a boost going into the interview for hopefully helping them succeed. And like my whole thing with magic too is like it's a little bit of like spicy psychology, right? It's
Hmm.
a lot about power of belief.
Hmm.
So if you give this cookie to somebody and say this is going to help you with your interview, it doesn't matter if there's actually like magic helping with the interview.
Hmm.
What matters is the belief that it will help, and then they'll go into the interview more confident.
Oh, it's the placebo effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I'm the hugest believer of that.
Mhm.
I I've had to start busing to and from work in the morning because my husband like we only have one car and my husband's
Mhm.
teaching and we both work in two different cities, so it's just not possible.
Right.
So I've been drinking a lot of like vitamin C packs and stuff. And one of my coworkers stopped me and she's like, I'm just gonna use my real name here. So she's like, Jen, like, do you think that this is actually helping you? Like, do you think this is actually keeping you awake? And I said, no, no, I actually don't think that. But if I convince myself
Mhm.
that this is helping, it's going to make me stop craving a coffee. It's going to make me stop craving sugar. I have to
Right.
just convince myself that this is what I am doing.
Right.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the same idea. It's just you're putting that positive vibes out there and you're thinking of a positive thought and you're like, I've
Mhm.
eaten this cookie. I'm going to have positive thoughts going in there because of these ingredients. So it's
Yes.
yeah, it's mind over matter, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and I think there's been a lot of research into the power of belief. And
Hmm.
I feel like modern witchcraft, a lot of it is just really harnessing that for your own benefit. Um, I joke with my friends that tarot often feels like therapy,
Hmm.
because a lot of the times it's like the cards will reflect it in a way that makes you kind of think about things that you've maybe been avoiding or um, like problems that you don't necessarily want to address. And it's like saying now is the time to address them if you want to keep moving forward. And it's a really good like mental exercise, I think, in terms of like journaling and things like that.
I I think it's a healing process,
Yeah.
right? So how often do you do tarot readings and also where do you find your tarot cards?
So the tarot cards, you can find them at bookstores actually. But we
Okay.
also have like a metaphysical shop that sells them in my city. And I also am fortunate enough to live in an area that there is a large enough pagan community that we have witch markets around when the festivals would be. So for the most recent one was Mavam, which is the essentially the fall equinox festival.
Mhm.
Um, so they'll have a bunch of like witches and vendors gather together to sort of celebrate. There's activities to do, and there's a lot of people who like sell tarot cards or crystals or like things like that at these events. So, yeah.
If you're listening to this and you wanted to know like where you can find these markets, is there what communities can you join so you don't miss out going to these markets?
So I'm trying to think of even how I found this one. I think honestly, the Instagram algorithm got it to me. But I would say Witch Talk actually tread carefully because there's some like not great actors in there. But there are parts of Witch Talk that really help me find community.
Mhm.
And I have like this extended community now through the people I found on there. Um, and then just, like if there's a metaphysical shop in your area, that's a good place. They usually host events and things like that. Um, if that's not accessible to you, finding community online is perfectly valid. And there's usually, at least in my experience, a lot of people in the witch community don't want to gatekeep. They want to, welcome new people in and teach them and help them be safe in their practice too.
Mhm.
Um, like a lot of witches will work with candle magic, and fire safety is really important when you're doing candle magic. Like, so we'll try and educate people on that before they get too crazy with things. Like, don't if you're making candles at home, don't pack it with too many things, or the glass is going to explode. And that's not like a magic sign. That is you just
Mhm.
like overload the candle. So,
So what is candle magic? I'm just assuming it's candle based. Am I wrong to feel that way?
candle based magic, yeah. So candle magic usually overlaps with like color magic a little bit. So you'll choose a candle that is like a specific color that aligns with your intention. Generally, like black and white are good for like protection and cleansing.
Mhm.
Green is for fertility. Red could be for love. So things like that. Um, and you'll often, again, carve sigils or runes into the candle and then light it with the intention,
Mhm.
and then let it burn down completely in order to complete the spell.
That's so
So,
interesting. That's so
yeah.
interesting. It's all intention.
Yeah.
I love that. It's just
Mhm.
the intention of trying to put positivity out there and get your wishes across because I am convinced that most of us are tied with invisible strings. We just don't
Yes.
realize
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That's
Um,
definitely, yeah.
is there any type of the witchcraft industry or anyone who, can potentially see the future or have deja vu all the time? Would you consider that part of witchcraft or is that its own thing?
I would say I personally am of the belief that everybody has their own sort of like metaphysical gifts,
Hmm.
as it were. Um, and I would say like really witchcraft is just leaning into those gifts
Okay.
in some ways. So like people who are tarot readers tend to be very intuitive. And that's why they're able to like read the cards. And intuition is a skill that you can use too. Um, but like that's why I was drawn to tarot initially. I've also had really vivid dreams that end up coming true in some way or like being a warning or a sign about something
Hmm.
personally. But I would also like take those things with a grain of salt too. Like if someone approaches you and says they have like a vision of your future or something, that they're usually just trying to scam you.
Uh,
Um,
that is very fair. That is very, but it's drawing the fine line,
yeah.
right? Because there are truly good participating uh, pagans and witches out there that are doing good. And then you have the dark side of the coin that people are out there trying to benefit themselves only.
Yes.
Yes, which I
Yeah.
don't like. I don't like that at all.
No.
Um, Now, I actually had two questions come
Hmm.
into this podcast because I put the beacon out. I
Hmm.
threw a shot in the dark. I wasn't sure if I was gonna find anybody. So I found you, which is great. But I had two people ask a question. I'm not gonna give their names because it's all anonymous.
Hmm.
Um, so if you mind, I'm gonna read them off to you.
Go for it.
It says, "Hi, thank you, Stassi, for hosting this podcast. I have a question for whoever you have on your podcast. Are there ways to curse your ex-boyfriends to make sure that they never find love again?"
Oh gosh. Oh,
Because we've
I
only
don't know
talked
if I.
about spells. We've not talked about cursing.
So I am actually of the belief that baneful magic can be incredibly healing.
Okay.
That's not necessarily a popular belief in the witchcraft community. It depends. There's like two different schools of thought. There's one that says you should never do baneful workings because it'll come back on you threefold. And I personally think if you do it right, and it's really realistically you just kind of pushing karma along
Mhm.
and nudging it a little bit more to work a little faster, then you'll be okay. I think you have to be intentional about your wards, um, and your intention with it.
Mhm.
Uh, I would also say, though, for this person, what might be a better use of their energy, and I would need to know more about the situation, but what might
Yes.
be more helpful in the situation is a cord cutting ceremony. And what that is you take two candles representing the individuals, and you tie them together with string. You light both the candles at the same time. And that represents a cutting off of the energetic ties you have to this person so they can no longer influence your life in any way. And that I think is a lot more helpful in the cases of like a bad breakup or something. Um, Granted, if you want to hex them to be unlucky in love, there's ways to do that too. I've done that for friends in the past in really egregious situations. But I'm not gonna help myself on those.
But I do like the cord cutting. I think that's a beautiful.
Yeah.
It's as I say tranquility, but that's not the word I'm trying to say. It's healing. It
Yes.
is a I still can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but it is it's just healing. It
Mhm.
just heals out so you can move on. I just
Yeah.
read that question and I was like, there is just some girl out there who just got her heart broken,
Yeah.
wanting to know how she can curse her ex, which I
Yeah.
thought was funny. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie to you. I thought that was pretty funny. But the fact that you have done that, so what if I came to you and said, you know what? I want you to put a curse on a man that has caused me so much trauma. What would you say to that?
I would want to know more about the situation so
Okay.
that the consequences could be equivalent to the damage, if that makes sense.
Yep. That
Um,
totally makes sense.
so like one that I will say that I done in the case of like someone tried to steal my car. Um, they didn't succeed, but I was still pretty mad that they had damaged my car in doing so. So a quick little hex I had done was burn the hand of the person who tried to take my car from me. Um, no way of knowing if it actually worked. But like having a specific intention behind the hex is really healing, and it makes you feel like you've done something or enacted some sort of justice. And if it did work, realistically, how would that play out? Maybe they burn their hand on the grill or something, like when they're trying to make some food, burn their hand on the oven. Like that would be satisfying the need of the hex
Yep.
and would also fit the crime of trying to steal something.
I like that. A hot hand. Don't
Mhm.
steal my shit. So
Yeah.
how did you hex them?
So that was a I took a bunch of spices that are meant to be used in hexes, things like black peppercorns and chili, things that have heat.
Mhm.
Um, And then I wrote the intention on a piece of paper, read it out loud 3 times, crumpled it up, put it in a bowl with the spices, and then lit the note on fire with the spices. Um,
Oh.
so lots of fire and witchcraft.
Lots of fire and witchcraft. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Okay,
Mhm.
my next question and final question is, are voodoo dolls real?
Yes, but voodoo is a closed practice. So
Is it
that is,
okay? So
yeah.
it's nothing. It's that's not this.
Yeah, it's not this. It's not something that I have access to. Voodoo is very specific to the Black community and to a specific section of the Black community. So
Yes.
I don't deal with any of that. That is a closed practice.
Hmm.
And I would say to anyone interested in getting into witchcraft, really do your research on what is closed and open practice and make sure you are not taking from cultures that are.
What is the difference between a closed and open? I'm just curious.
So closed practice, you need to be invited in, or you need to have some sort of ancestral tie to it. It has to be given to you.
Okay.
It is not something that you can just take without asking.
Okay.
Whereas open practice things like I believe most of Wiccan practices are technically considered open. Um, that is everyone is invited in. There's like an open invitation. It's kind of like throwing it back to The Sims. It's kind of like clubs that are invite only versus like open invite, so you like you can join. Um, so like closed practice is invite only, and open practice is anybody can join. So
Awesome.
yeah.
I love that. I just so is there anything close to a voodoo doll that's not closed off if you wanted to do some form of cursing with an object of theirs or something on the lines of that?
Think of in the specifics of like a voodoo. Um, I will say like having a name, having a picture can be useful for specific targeting hex spells.
Okay.
So like I guess just like general hexes or curses would be the closest to it, but it's not necessarily like the physical object of the voodoo doll.
Okay.
So
Okay. Because I wasn't sure. Like, so say like if I wanted to curse me, and here is someone wanted to curse me. Here is my hat.
hmm
So it has like obviously has hair in here. Definitely
hmm
has my sweat in here.
hmm
Um, could they take this item and say, I want to put a curse on Stassi?
Potentially, yes. And that is why
Potentially.
warding is important.
You say
So
why wording is important?
warding, yes.
Wording.
WARD.
Oh, wording. Wording.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. So that is actually the advice I have for most new practitioners. Learn how to ward before you learn how to do anything else.
What is wording?
So warding is creating energetic protections for yourself, for your space, for your household, for your people. Um, in order first, so like nothing, you don't like draw any unwanted attention for anything when you're doing your spell work, but also so like if you piss off another practitioner, the spells bounce off, like as it were.
As they were.
Yeah. So
And like so what would you do besides put salt at your door to protect your house for warding? Like what other methods would you do?
so a method that I personally like is like taking nails and tying them together with red thread in a cross and then just hiding that over a doorway or entryway
Okay.
that blocks any negative spirits from coming in. Another thing you can do, you can actually use your houseplants. You can give your houseplants like a little offering of maybe like give them some really good fertilizer or something and say, I am giving you this. Please guard this entry point that you are at from any like negative intention or like disruptive energy.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of times with that, if the plant dies, it's because it's taken on some sort of negative energy with those, or at least that's
Oh,
the belief around it.
that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. Okay. So I want to go on this with some fresh eyes. So say I want to start practicing Wiccan or witchcraft. Sorry, witchcraft, and I don't really know where to start. what would
Mhm.
you recommend me doing besides warding, learning how to ward?
So, to the end of warding in particular, the a book that I recommend for every new practitioner is by Rest of Nail and Prick of Thorn, which is like a great thick little, it's like maybe this thick book about warding and protections and the basics around that. Um, I would say also like look at what you're drawn to. So I do kitchen magic because I love baking, right? My friend who's the sea witch is a sea witch because they love the ocean. They love going to the beach and collecting shells and driftwood and using those things in their lives. So look at what you're drawn to,
Hmm.
and find ways to incorporate that in your practice. Um, and the other thing is shadow work, which is really just journaling and sort of inner reflection. It's like taking a look at the deep wounds that you carry with you and really like pulling them out into the light and examining them and making peace with them.
Hmm.
So that's where a lot of witchcraft gets kind of tied to therapy in my mind, is that
Okay.
it requires a lot of introspection and a lot of like really dealing with the uncomfortable things in your inner world and confronting them and like healing those parts of yourself.
Okay. No, that's amazing and such amazing advice. And I hope anybody listening to this and really wants to get into this world that they take that advice and,
Mm.
adventure. What if you wanted to like meet up and do like can you do like a multi-spell with like several different types of people that do different types of
Yes.
witch spell
So there are
witchcraft?
ritual spells. I haven't really participated in any just because I don't have like a large enough in-person community with me.
Hmm.
But that is something like a lot of witchcraft and occult books will have recommendations for variations of spells that can either be done by yourself with two practitioners or with a group as a ritual spell.
Hmm.
Um, so those Yeah, so there is a way to do like again, we'd call them ritual spells if it's for a group, where usually there's like everyone chants the same thing and it has the same intention. Um, Sort of on like a different level, something else that I personally participate in is like social justice magic, as it were.
Okay.
So like witches across the internet coordinating with each other that we're going to do this spell at this time, on this date with this intention, and we're all going to do it at the same time in our different places and time zones with whatever we have on hand. Um,
That is fascinating. How would that work out of curiosity? I'm very curious now.
so it's things like, how do I explain this? So a lot of the times we'll use like universal timestamps, right? To
Hmm.
mark this is the time we're going to be doing this thing. Um, it takes a lot of coordination.
Hmm.
Usually, though, there will be like people will list variations of the spell, so people can use what's local to them or available to them.
Hmm.
Um, but the focus is usually like we'll keep the same words, like the same chant or the same like thing that we're writing on a piece of paper and burning or what have you. Um, so that essentially we're all doing the same individual spell, but we're doing it together to magnify the impact.
Okay. Fascinating. And you said social justice.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's like, I think the one that stands out to me was right in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
Um, there was a group of witches who coordinated together to specifically target the Supreme Court,
Mm.
in the wake of that, just to like bring about justice for what they had done, uh, as it were. And I'm
Yes.
not saying that it worked, but I am saying that Clarence Thomas did get quite sick after.
I was
So
gonna say, I'm pretty sure one of them got really sick.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny that. Um,
Yeah.
just a
Stassi approve.
coincidence,
I'm just saying
I'm
Stassi
sure.
approve. Just saying. Um, but I like that. I like that
Mhm.
again, even if maybe it could have been coincidence or serendipitous,
Hmm.
you'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know. That's awesome. Now, is there anything else that you want to share to anybody listening to this that just, really wants to learn more about witchcraft?
I would say if you're looking at getting into witchcraft, you have to be really comfortable with research and with reading a lot. Um, don't just engage in spell work like willy-nilly on a whim, as it were. Because you wanna make sure you have a good foundation, that you have the right protections in place, and that you don't have unintended consequences to whatever it is you're doing. And you also want to be respectful of other cultures and other groups and make sure that you're not taking things from closed practices that are not for you.
Well, I think that is such amazing advice. Thank you so much for coming here today and
Yeah.
educating me. I had no idea going into this. I
Mhm.
would learn so much and just how wholesome it is.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, for
love
sure.
that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming. Where can we find you?
I am at Eruudia on Twitch and Instagram. So,
I love
yeah.
that. Well, please go follow Eruudia. And again, thank you so much for coming here today and sharing your wisdom with us. Everybody listening to this, I hope you take a part of this. And if you want to learn witchcraft, take the step in. There's a huge community out there where you can learn either open practices, or if it's a closed practice and you have family members, or you can get into the closed practice, do research before doing that. But thank you so much. I want to wish everybody the best spooky season. I cannot believe it's already Halloween. I feel like we just started 2024. It feels like it's been a time warp.
Mhm.
But thank you so much for everyone for coming here today and enjoying this podcast and enjoying Real Life with Stassi. The rest of the season's pretty sporadic, gonna be honest with you. It's whatever I come up with a fun topic, but we will be doing some fun topics coming in to the holiday season where I would like to interview other cultures and learn what they do to celebrate the holidays instead of it always just being a Christian-based holiday. So stay tuned for those. And anyways, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye.